Hey guys, welcome to Hard Rock Rewind, where we chat about all things 80s metal and hard rock. My name is Troy Barrett, my co-host is Dale Keating, and today we actually had our first guest on the show. Dale, who was our first guest?
It was Brett Garsed. Brett Garsed. That's just it. If you're an Australian growing up in the 80s, you're a massive John Farnham fan, you'll know who Brett Garsed is. If you're growing up in the 90s and you're a massive hard rock fan, then you would know who Brett is from his Nelson stint as well. For me, probably one of the top 5 guitar players in the world. So, yeah, massive coup for us to have Brett as our first guest.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, without further ado, here is our interview with Brett Garsed. Brett, first off, welcome to the show, mate. It's amazing to have you on. We're both massive fans. What I thought we'd do is do a quick timeline of. We're both pretty familiar with your background. I think probably most fans of you of your playing is. We'd love to just bring it straight up to sort of the Whispering Jack period. So just to you fill in any details that are missing here. So basically, you were born in rural Victoria, started playing guitar at the age of 12. You were featured in the 1985 Guitar Player magazine in the Spotlight section as a guitarist to look out for. You wanted to get into some bands or playing. You sent out some demos to labels, management and whatnot, and you heard back from Mr. Glenn Wheatley, who was John Farnham's manager, and got an audition for John Farnham. Is that pretty much how it sort of went up to that sort of point?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, just I think I started playing a little earlier than 12. I probably should change my bio. But
I'm going off Wikipedia there.
yeah. I think I might have started at least a year earlier, like 11.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was in the same band with my cousins here in the Castlemaine, where I still live. Where I live, and we just played around local pubs. And you see, back then we're talking sort of mid to late 70s. So we'd probably be about 1978, around that time.
That's when I was born.
Back then, for a town of this size. What's that?
That's when I was born, 78. Great year.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, a great year for everything then.
Yeah.
But yeah, like back then, this was a very small town, like maybe 5,000 people in it. But there was at least 3 or 4 pubs, and every Friday, Saturday night, there were bands in all those pubs. So gigs are plenty. Like we played almost every weekend, Friday, Saturday night, and it was just awesome. We had a great time. Around, I think it was the Spotlight column thing was just me being a voracious reader of Guitar Player magazine whenever I could get it, because it was the magazine back then. And it wasn't until really the eruption, that's a bit of a pun, the eruption of Van Halen that spawned all these other magazines. But Guitar Player was the one to read. And I noticed this column in it up the back that Mike Varney was doing called Spotlight. And I was really enjoying reading it about all these up-and-coming players that were trying to promote themselves. And I just looked at it and thought, there's no Aussies in here. And I thought, what the hell, I'll send a photo and a tape and see what he says. And he stuck me in it. So I'm pretty sure I was the first Australian to end up in there. But Frank Gambale was in there, Stuart Box. I'm sure there were more, but I think I was the first one. I don't recall anybody else being in there before me, but I seem to have read all of them. So
yeah,
and I just basically used that as a resume, because up to that point I didn't have one. I had no real career to hang my hat on. That was about the only outside reference to my playing that I had. So I just Xeroxed it and did handwritten letters and little cassettes and stuffed them in post bags and sent them to all these addresses that I found in the Sonics magazine yearbook. And luckily one of them was Glenn Wheatley's, and he was really the only person that responded in any way favorably, and it absolutely changed my life. It's the reason we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
What an absolute legend, like Glenn Wheatley is. God bless him. But, it's interesting that you mentioned that, you were probably one of the first, or you were the first Australian guitar player in the Spotlight section. because I dare say, and we'll get to a lot of this, but you're probably the first Australian guitar player to achieve a lot of things. You know, like when we actually down to it.
When we were doing those clinics together, and I'd sort of tell my story because I'd be looking out to see very young faces. All the guitar players, aspiring players, were really young, and I'm sure they were there because Metallica played ESP, and they're probably looking at me going, "Well, who's this guy?" But I think a lot of their parents knew who I was. But I love telling that story, and it had nothing to do with big noting me because I mean it's the grand luck of the whole thing that A, I chose that moment to send out tapes, and B, one of them landed on Glenn's desk, and C, that John Farnham and Ross Fraser obviously thought I was worth giving a shot. And I just loved the naivety of the whole thing, where I didn't ask any of my mates or anything like that, like, do you think I should do this? I just sent them out, and I thought, you know what, it's got nothing to do with them, because I knew most of them would probably say, what's the point? Nothing ever happens to us around here anyway. And I thought, I'll leave the decision up to someone who actually can make a difference if they choose to give me that good decision. And I was so glad I did that. Like, that's what I would tell in those clinics is like, don't ever think that it may be the longest shot in the world, but it's still worth a go. You just don't know. It's like, and it worked for me. What can I say? Got lucky.
So when you did the audition, sorry, something just came on my computer there. Were you how familiar were? I mean, you probably would have heard of John Farnham, but was in your eyes, was he a big star at the time? Was he someone, or was he, because obviously that would have been 85 or 86 aroundabouts, and he was obviously he'd done some stuff for Little River Band and whatnot. But yeah, was he like a big name to you at the time with the audition?
He was, yeah, because I mean, obviously I remember John from the onset of his career pretty much. Like I did remember Sadie, and I remember, Raindrops and One, and all the hits that he had through that. And I remember my sister and her then fiance went down to see the musical Pippin that John was in, and they had the book. They had the book from the gig, so I remember reading through it, and I thought, oh, there he is. And then when Uncovered came out, where he did the version of Help, and my other sister and her husband had a single of a song off that album called Too Much Too Soon, and I was just starting to have a crack at singing at that stage and really trying to figure out what my range was and what other singers could do. And John's vocals on that thing were just nuts. I remember thinking, who is this guy? And then, of course, I've always been a massive LRB fan. Like, I love Little River Band from their inception. And while I'm mentioning, a big shout out to poor Roger McLaughlin, who the original bass player who passed away just last week. So, anyway, we'll get into that later. But so I mean, I devoured the Net album, which is what the first album John did, and I remember listening to it, just thinking, can this guy do this live? I mean, I'd been to see plenty of metal bands where the singers were not capable of singing on what they did on the albums. They'd always duck melodies or hold the microphone out to the crowd, and fair enough, it's hard work. It's like they're putting on a show, they're high energy, and so anyway, I think it was about 1980, about 82, 83. And my mates and I decided to drive all the way from here in Castlemaine to Bathurst to go to the car race. And just an excuse to get hammered, really. I mean, what better opportunity are you going to find? But we realised that they'd built an amphitheatre sort of venue there, which was just like a sort of an area they dug out at the bottom of the mountain, and where the racetrack was, right up the top. And they wanted to have bands there every year. They wanted to have a band there for the cars and a band there for the bikes. And LRB were the first band, and they said, well, if you bought a ticket to the race, you can come see the gig. And I was like, brilliant. So we walked all the way up the mountain to this venue and proceeded to watch LRB live. And John just absolutely annihilated what he did on the album. Like, it was the only time I'd ever seen that where a singer obliterated what he did in the studio and was even better live, like way better. And this guy was putting on a show. Like, he was running around more than Bruce Dickinson. I'd been to see Maiden about a year earlier, and I was like, he's making mincemeat out of these people. And that gig is actually on YouTube now. You can find it. Like,
really?
Yeah, you can find it. Man, right at the end of the gig, they do a song called, I think it's called "Don't Tell Me You Love Me." Maybe it's I don't recall it. Like, it must be it's either an obscure LRB track that I didn't know because it wasn't on the Net album. he sings some stuff on there that is off the charts, man. It's almost off my fretboard.
Yeah.
And when you listen to it, it's not like he's just screaming high notes. It is note perfect. I could play my guitar to it, and it would pretty much phase cancel. The guy's pitch and control. It's like if you took... The only way I could really describe him to somebody is like if you took the actual musicality, the harmonic knowledge and improvisational chops of like a Stevie Wonder, and probably Stevie's range as well, and combined it with the power of, I don't know, Ronnie James Dio or Robert Plant, but he's still more powerful than all of them. You know, it's like, you know, John was like that right up until COVID when we stopped.
Yeah.
So
What do you attribute that to?
And once again, the nicest guy in the world. Like, I mean, just the nicest bloke. Like an absolute joy to be around. I mean, I couldn't have got any luckier. Like, I mean, even if he'd been a horrible individual, I would have still been in awe of his talent.
Yeah.
And if he'd been an average singer but a lovely guy like he is, I would have loved him. But he was both. I mean, you know, the nicest guy in the world, humble to a fault, and hands down one of the greatest musicians I've ever been in the vicinity of. Unbelievable.
Wow.
So here's a question. So here's a quick question. How was he like that? What was it about him? How had he trained his vocals? Like, what had he done that made him that? Because a lot of people try it and they go, you know, they do their vocal exercise, they do their warm-ups, you know, they learn how to sing, but they're not that. Like what do you attribute that to?
Obviously there's a genetic factor there, because I mean, because you're talking about the instrument itself, and it's not just the range and the power, it's the longevity of it. I mean, there've been many powerful male vocalists over the years that have been incredible, but they usually would burn their voices out. Like, especially the hard rock singers that had the big albums, like you know, Bon Jovi, Brian Johnson, Joe Elliott. Like, I mean, it's through success, because they had these incredible breakthrough records that just had them touring the world for 2 years straight, and no in-ear monitors back then. They were fighting with, you know, 4 foldback and loud amps behind them. I mean, it must have been absolutely grueling. But John did all that too, and I mean, like I said, there's a genetic component to it where he's just born that way. But the musicality, you can't. That's not genetic. I mean, well, you know, it's a gift, but I mean, his sense of rhythm and time, and you know, the song "Playing to Win," right? You know that song, right?
Yeah.
And it starts with a keyboard thing, which I thought David Hirschfelder came up with, because it's all that syncopated thing. One day we were sitting backstage and John picked up an acoustic and proceeded to play the riff.
Yeah, wow.
And I said, what's this? And he said, that's Playing to Win. It's how I wrote it. So he was sitting there mucking around with the guitar and doing all this incredible syncopated stuff, and that's how he wrote it. The guy's a monster musician, but he doesn't rate himself. He's just he doesn't think he is, but he is. And but as to he's just one of a kind. I don't know how to describe it to you. It's just we'll probably never see his like again.
No, I mean,
he's extremely happy right now.
I honestly think like he's probably one of, if not one of the best male vocalists we've had in the world. Like he's phenomenal. We've got a mutual friend, Gav, who went and saw. I didn't get a chance to see it, but I think it was on the. I don't know if it was the 25th or 30th, or it was at the anniversary of Whispering Jack album, and I think he was touring around Australia doing the full album in its entirety. And he took some video footage. I think he played. I'm not sure if you were playing.
Yeah,
that.
I did it.
Yeah. So I think he was. Yeah, he went and it was at the Palace in Melbourne.
I'll be the Palace.
Like a Palace, sorry. And songs all in the original key and still exactly like the album. You know what I mean? Like it was just phenomenal. Wow. Yeah, and even I forget the song. I won't waste the time. But yeah, just the high parts on some of the tunes are just like off the charts, and he still pulls them off. You know?
Oh
yeah.
He wouldn't drop keys. We when we were doing the last time tour back in the early 2000, I think it was around then. No, probably 2002. And I do remember the only time he ever thought about dropping a key for a song was "War Is Over." Yeah. And he thought, let's try it in. I think it's in A. And I think he decided let's just try it in A flat, just see what happens. So we did it in A flat, and we finished it. And he stood there and he went, "Nah," he said, "there's no blood in it. Put it back up." You know,
Yeah, wow.
It was the fact that he had to fight to do it that made it what it was. It's you know, Jimmy Barnes would probably say the same thing. It's the fact you got to fight for it that gives it the sound and the vibe. So
Absolutely.
yeah, what a powerhouse, man.
So when you auditioned, I mean, what was your audition like? Did they just sit you down and kind of like go shred for us or play your stuff, or was it a jam? Did they have a band, or did you and John sit down and jam on some tunes, or was it? Or how did that sort of eventuate?
It was pretty hilarious, actually. My girlfriend at the time and I drove down to John's house, and I can't remember where he was living. I remember going to the house vividly, but I can't remember where it was. And he met me at the door and just, "G'day, mate, I'm John," you know, and scared the living hell out of me. Like, I mean, you know, I didn't know what to say. I was like, "Oh my God, it's really him." I don't know what I thought was going to happen. Like some doorman was going to come there.
Yeah.
Mr. Button will see you now. I don't know. But yeah, we just walked in, and Ross Fraser was there, and they just had like it looked like it was a 4-track sort of Tascam type setup, you know, really very bare bones, basic thing, and they said, "Look, we're working on this tune." And this was before anyone was talking about Whispering Jack or anything like that. Way before that.
Oh well, okay.
He was still a member of Little River Band at this time. This was like around November or October or November of 1985. So they said, "Look, we're just working on this tune. Why don't you just chuck a solo on it?" I was like, "Okay." And I remember they were laughing at me because I had this little cassette player, like a boombox cassette player that I could plug my guitar into through a Dodd preamp.
Yeah.
And it had it was a microphone input, and if I turned on the monitor speaker, it was a guitar amp.
Yeah, wow.
And it was pretty Acme, but it was pretty loud. It worked, you know. It was the only. Otherwise, I'm dragging my Marshall stack in there, and I thought, well, I can't do that. And so they thought that was pretty funny, but I think I ended up going DI or something. It was really weird, but anyway, it turns out the song was a demo of "Let Me Out," so which was on Whispering Jack. So I blew 2 solos and. I got lucky. I didn't hit any bad notes. I was just purely winging it by ear. I'd never heard the thing before in my life, and I got lucky. I just played a couple of. I thought they were good solos, and they liked them. And the classic thing was Ross said, "What would you do in the verses?" And I was listening to it, and I thought, it's hard to know. There's no vocal there. I don't really know what to do. And John said, "Oh, I'll chuck one down for you real quick." So he grabbed a 57, I think it was, wasn't even 58, Shure 57. And did it in his lounge room. It was like 11 in the morning. I mean, you know, he probably hadn't even had a coffee.
Yeah.
And you know, the legs up, full volume, the whole thing, like sang the whole thing down. I'm just sitting there completely gobsmacked, you know, like, what the hell is happening here? And I don't even know what I played in the verses. I think I was sort of too shell-shocked to play anything, to be honest. But here's the kicker, because I remember the solo was in a very strange key, and I thought, oh, this is all flats, you know, puts it in a really weird key, but I got lucky and didn't hit any clangers. That's because the original song, the version of the song they were working on, Let Me Out, was in the key of A.
Yep.
So the chord progression went C, D, A.
Yep.
But when we did the album, it was an F sharp, so it was down a minor third. So he sang that tune a minor third up from whatever he sang on that at 11 in the morning in his lounge room.
That's insane.
And, nuts, man. It's like, and you know, and for the next 40 years, nearly 40 years, I just got to have moments like that all the time of just going, are you even human? You know, I'd never seen or heard anything like it. Unbelievable. It was hilarious when we went out and actually started, because on that tour, that was just a pub tour that he did, that Glenn set up for John to just sort of keep his chops up, you know, go out and flex a bit while LRB were on hiatus. And so it was David Hirschfelder was in the band. Derek Polici from Little River Band was on drums.
Yeah.
Sam C was on guitar as well. Thank God. I was so nervous. I thought, I can't straight out of a pub band from Castlemaine. I can't be John Farnham's only guitar player. And I thought, oh, thank God Sam's there, because I knew of Sam. He was a legend, still is. And he really sort of held the fort, and I just kind of filled in the blanks. He was amazing. And Bruno De Stanislao played bass, and Nicky Nichols did BVs. And And it was great fun. We were playing Legs by ZZ Top, Black Knight by Deep Purple.
Oh, wow.
Nicky did Whole Lotta Love. It was awesome. Like I was
Yeah.
really was not expecting that at all. But I remember just the first night I watched him work. Like I'd never, watching him actually from the stage, watching this guy work a stage. And I remember just standing there going, you can't lose. I mean, no one sings like him, and he's all over the place. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it was like having Captain America as your front man, you couldn't lose, It's like, I was like, Jesus, where did they build this guy, in a lab or something? It's like John was just the everything, the prototypical front person for a band. Unreal.
Yeah.
And so, and sorry to jump because I know you're going to ask another question, but at that point in time, were you predominantly like a rock player? Like at that point, had you kind of started to get into that jazz fusiony stuff then, or was it just straight rock at that point?
I was already listening to it a lot. Like, I mean, I'd already been listening to Larry Carlton and Alan Holdsworth, and and even Jeff Beck. Like, I mean, I was trying to play along with those things, but I mean, I had no idea what I was doing other than just listening. Like, I was playing modally and things like that. I was following chords and things like that and all that sort of stuff, but no real theoretical knowledge. I was, I'd be playing, a certain series of chords would come up and I'd follow the chords. So I'd be playing Lydian for this chord and Mixolydian for that chord and Dorian for that chord, but I didn't know that they had names. I just thought, well, I knew the sounds. I knew the sounds of the intervals. Like,
yeah.
And luckily, I think it was just from jamming along to albums a lot. And, my cousin Neil and our good friend Ken, who were the drummer and bass player in our local band, they were just really good. Like, they were a good rhythm section and they had impeccable groove and time. Like, Ken was a great drummer. He never sped up or slowed down. The songs were always in the right tempo. Like, it was just great. So it was great training for me to fit in with these pro players. Like, I mean, and also playing along to albums, I'm playing along to Deep Purple. I'm jamming with Ian Pace and Roger Glover, and I'm playing with Bonzo and John Paul Jones. And, every time I'm playing along to a great album, it's the stars. And so when I was in that band with those pro players, I just thought, I just got to follow along, just hang with these guys and you'll be okay. And they were so supportive. Like, I mean, God knows what they must have thought of me. I must have looked like this green bogan kid from the bush. I mean, because I was. And they were awesome. They treated me so well and they really lifted me up. Like, I mean, they really lifted me up to their level. I progressed really fast from being around them and always did. It was always a great band to be in.
I was going to say, did you ever get a sense of imposter syndrome? Like, did you ever feel like I just shouldn't be here? Like, I'm here, but I probably shouldn't be here. Did you ever feel that?
I've got it right now talking to you. I mean, I've lived it. I've lived nothing but imposter syndrome. Because, I mean, I don't know. I can't discount the luck of it all. Like, I mean, just the miracle of which just once again brings me back to those guitar clinics. Like, to tell those young kids who were sitting there looking at me going, I don't know who this guy is, but that's a hell of a story. And because I love the story. The story wasn't, look at me, I'm in a rock band and I'm a professional musician, you should all bow before me. I was like, I just threw some paint at the wall and without knowing it, I just met all the right people. And see, the thing is too, that the thing I love about that story is that when I met John and we did that first tour, he was still in Little River Band. It wasn't until towards the end of the tour that Ross and John sort of pulled me aside and said, look, John's going to work on an album next year. Would you like to play on it? And I said, yeah, would I? Yeah. And so I think I just bugged them for the next 6 months until they cut me down to the studio. But I would mention to people, like after that tour, because I just went back to my job here in town, plumbing, went back to my work and waited for a phone call. And I remember talking to people and saying, I just did a tour with John Farnham and I think I'm going to get to play on an album that he's working on. And a lot of the responses were, yeah, man, great singer, but, it's like, I think his time's past, hasn't it? It's like, what are the odds that's going to go anywhere? And I was just sitting around thinking about it going, yeah, that's showbiz, isn't it? It's people, it's all what they see. I heard the greatest singer that I'd ever heard, and I saw the greatest front man that I'd ever seen, and I thought, that I'm sold. That's all I need to see. I couldn't give a stuff about what you think is hip or what you think is trendy. This guy's one of the best, and I think he should be one of the biggest stars that we've ever seen. And it actually happened. I mean, thank God. You know, I'm so grateful that it happened for John, because he bloody well deserved it.
So
Always
when
did.
when you were recording and doing your parts for Whispering Jack, I'm always fascinated by this with other big bands. Did you feel in the time that you were creating something or a part of something special? Did you think, was there a vibe in the room amongst the guys, or even talked about like, well, I think we're sitting on something pretty big here. This is going to go pretty big, or is it you were just doing your thing and were you thinking, oh well, this sounds really cool, and we'll just see how it goes, I guess.
Yeah, look, I think there was no thought of like this is going to change the world or anything. I don't think that's how you make an album or even a good piece of music. If you've got that in the forefront of your mind or even in the back of your mind, you're not focused on what's happening in front of you. And you've got to be really just incredibly honest with yourself, and it's almost self-production, really. Like, I mean, Ross was there as the producer, but John and David had to sit there and listen to it objectively and go, no, we can get this better. This isn't cutting it. We get rid of that. This is good. Let's keep working with that. You can't be thinking about the after effects of it. It's like focusing on how good the after party is going to be with that when you haven't even done the gig yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like the gig should be everything. And then if after that you have a good time and everyone's having fun, then it's because you've earned it and you've created that. But it's the same with the album. You've got to be focused on the creation of what you're doing, and be kind of merciless with yourself, and don't ever be like, it's good enough. And I mean, John knew that this was, he says it in his book, he knew that Whispering Jack was it.
Yeah.
It was the last go. Like, if this didn't work, he was kind of over, because no one would ever give him a chance again. Yeah. And you know what? It almost didn't, because it was that, I can't remember her name. I actually got to meet her a couple of years ago when we were in Perth. And she's in the documentary, this amazing lady that was working at Eon FM. And DJs wouldn't even listen to You're the Voice. Glenn would walk in with it and they'd just be like, Johnny Farnham, nah, not interested. Yeah. And say to the cleaning lady, forget it. And this one lady who had the power sat down, listened to the song, and I think I got about halfway through it, and she just walked into one of the DJs and said, play it now.
Yeah.
I mean, Johnny Farnham, play it, you know. And the people made it a hit. You know, the guy played it, and it was the people running the phones off the hook going, what the hell is this song? Where can I buy it? And you know what? That's kind of how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like, there shouldn't be these gatekeepers of you know, record company people that don't know what they're bloody doing, and DJs and, you know, it's like the people should just get to hear things, which is kind of where we're at now with social media and YouTube and Bandcamp, you name it. Like, I mean, it's a lot to get through, but the people really can listen to anything they want now. And if enough of them latch on to something, it'll rise up and start to be noticed. So I think it's better than the old system where there was a select few people that said, no, we're not playing this, we'll play this. And it's like, well, those two things they chucked away could have been Bohemian Rhapsody, you know, could have been You're the Voice. It's like, can't remember that lady's name, but, I love her.
I remember seeing that on the doco. That doco is probably one of the best music docos I've ever seen. It was just such a...
Yeah, it's a good one.
Just being a musician myself, and I like the Dallas as well, but seeing that sort of come from down, being pushed down to getting where he is. It's just such an inspiring tale to watch him do it. It was just, it's phenomenal.
Well, John's a tough guy, man. One of the toughest people I ever met. Like, I mean, he's just one of those blokes that just, and based on the health struggles that he's had, I knew if anyone would come out the other side of that, it'd be him. So, he's incredible.
So when you toured, like when that album started to blow up, did you do like a gradual sort of touring? Did you do like a mini one and then it was selling more and more, so you went back on the road, or was it kind of like, or you kind of waited until it sold a amount and then we're like, that's when we're going to go straight to Rod Laver, or how did that sort of
No, because the way these things work is Glenn was obviously booking gigs long before the album came out.
Yeah, right.
And that's how you got to do it. Because so when the album hits, you've got a tour planned. You can't just sort of put the album out and then, is it doing any good? Should we start next week? It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Right? I know he already had gigs booked. The very first 2 shows we did for the Whispering Jack tour were at the Grain Store in Melbourne.
Mm-hmm.
And we did 2 nights at the Grain Store, and I have never seen it so packed. I mean, it must have been back in the days when the fire marshals didn't really come through and look at it. Because it was like, you know, people with like a couple of beers like that, and that was it. They didn't move, you know. They were just... I remember standing on the stage looking at it going, oh, I'm so glad I'm up here. That looks like hell out there. And hot, sweaty, and awesome. You know, it was just a great vibe. And they were just pubs. We did pubs. And that was it for at least a couple of months. I mean, and I remember the very first tour I did with John before the Whispering Jack album, we played for a few days, it was about 5 days up at Twin Towns up in Coolangatta, which is sort of like a large RSL type place.
Yeah.
And we'd been doing a few gigs in Melbourne, which were great. You know, John playing in pubs in Melbourne, he just always killed. Everyone came to see him, and they were really good, just full-on rock gigs, and I was loving it. And the curtain came back at Twin Towns, and I was pretty shocked because it was a much older crowd. They were definitely a lot of wives dragging the husbands along, as John used to make gags about. And, you know, they're all looking at John like this, and the husbands are there, you know, 2 more drinks and half full at best, you know. And but John killed every night. Like, he didn't care. Every night they got the full show every time. And then when we came back to do the Whispering Jack gigs, just lines around the block. I mean, we could have played there for 6 months and they wouldn't have got everybody in. It was amazing. Like, people were lined up for the sound check. I mean, it was crazy. And the most telling thing that happened on those initial gigs was we had 2 supports booked with Whitney Houston. So this is 1986, and Whitney is like 18 or 19. And I think Saving All My Love for You and all that stuff had just come out. Like, I mean, she was the hottest star in the world. And Glenn had managed to get John two nights at Sydney Entertainment Centre opening for her. And the first night we did it, we opened for her, then quickly moved and did a gig at a pub somewhere in Sydney. So we pulled a double that night.
Wow.
And then the second night I actually got to stay, and we all got to stay and watch Whitney's set, which was thoroughly mind-blowing, unbelievable. Yeah. But the weirdest thing was, I mean, we're doing pubs, right? I mean, I don't know, the biggest pub, maybe 1,000 people, maybe, I don't know, you know, they weren't that big. So we go into the Ent Centre and we walk up onto the stage to do the support, and the place is packed. It's jam-packed, and the roar that came off that crowd. I remember Angus Birchall and I still talk about it because we'd never heard anything like it before.
Wow.
And John got an encore. I mean, Whitney's management must have thought they'd been stitched up because, like, why did you put the hottest act in the country on before us?
Yeah.
And, you know, he had the number 1 single, he had the number 1 album. There was probably another single roaring up the charts as well. And it was wild. It was just, but Glenn couldn't predict that. He was just like, this would be a really good opportunity for John to get out there in front of some numbers, you know, it'd be a good gig. And it's very rare you go to see the main act like that, especially an international act where the place is not only packed, they get a standing ovation and an encore. And you know, much props to Whitney Houston and her management. They let John do his encore, but there might have been a riot if they hadn't. I mean,
wow,
yeah, it was crazy. So I mean, there you go. That just shows you what goes into these things. Like it's only when you're a known commodity and you can almost guarantee you're going to fill these big arenas that you book. You can sort of book ahead of time and have a bit of a game plan. But back then it was just watching all this unfold in real time, and it was wild. It was so much fun.
Brett, do you remember the very first time you heard whichever? I'm assuming you're the voice. Do you remember the very first time that you heard that on radio? So this is a song that you sat down recorded your guitar parts for, it got released, and then you were sitting there either at home or you're driving and you hear it on the radio for the first time. Do you actually remember that?
I think I heard it on the TV first because we
Yeah.
did the video. We did the video for it, and I remember I was still living at my mother's place, which was about 15 miles that way on the farm, and I was I probably had a big night or something like that, probably had a gig or whatever, you know. And she's banging on my door saying, "You're on the telly, you're on the telly." And I said this in the doco, you know. I came running down the stairs, and John was doing all the morning shows, like he's on all the regular TV, doing the circuit, you know, to promote the album. And so they're playing the video, and they kept using that segment of me with my singlet on, you know, doing the sort of the Rambo thing. So, you know, yeah, Mum she was stoked. She was like, "Oh my God, every time I change the channel, you're on it," you know, and yeah, it was wild. It was a real thrill, but I wasn't really aware of what was going on. I mean, because it wasn't long after that, obviously, we rallied the troops and started putting a band together. And I remember, you know, Angus coming in for his audition and all the rest of it. So yeah, it was just amazing. I mean, but you know, the beauty of it is, it all happened so organically. And I just, for some reason, I had this incredible perspective on it, where, you know, when I first went to those very first rehearsals with John before we did Whispering Jack, and I turned up in my Mazda 626 and he turned up in his Mazda 626, and it was way more beat up than mine.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at it. That's where I looked at it and went, showbiz, you know.
Yeah.
You know, this guy should have turned up in the space shuttle based on his talent. But the reality of it is he's struggling. And I thought, yeah, that's showbiz.
That's where I'm at. That's the same thing.
Where's your space shuttle, man? You know, it's like, but I had that. It was beautiful to see it all start to gradually unfold for John. I can see how his life was changing for him and Jill and their family. And I went, yeah, about bloody time, you know. And this time he's got a good manager who's not going to rip him off. Like, he's going to get to keep it and enjoy it. And he was so grateful for it. That's why everyone said, why don't you go to America? Go to America and, you know, work with Quincy Jones and David Foster and all these people. And John said, because I'm happy. And he knew that if the only way to crack America is to go there and live there, he'd have to uproot his family, and potentially it could all go pear-shaped, as it did for many bands. And he said, no, this is enough. I love being in Australia, and I want to do this. And good on him, you know. He's like, you know, I finally got it solid, you know, and he was right. Like, it really worked. It was perfect.
I was actually just going to ask you about America. Obviously, it went quite well in Europe, I think, from memory, especially Germany. Was it, for, I guess, two parts, was it released in America? And, yeah, secondly, if it was, aside from probably going there and basing himself there, why do you think it never really took off? Because he had played America with LRB, and he was a phenomenal vocalist. He's, you know, I mean, he could walk circles around all the other 80s guys at the time. Yeah, so first off, was it actually released in America? And if it was, why do you think it never took off?
I mean, it was released there.
Yeah.
For some reason, it just didn't stick.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. Even Heart, the band Heart, had a crack at releasing it. They recorded it and had a go at it.
What, the whole album? Or just that song?
No,
you mean?
Just You're the Voice. Yeah.
Oh, okay, right.
Voice.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, but You're the Voice was the thing they released there to try and get some traction. And for whatever reason, it just didn't stick.
Yeah, well.
And it's one of those great mysteries. Look, I mean, I bought both of Jimmy Barnes's audio books, and Working Class Boy, and then Working Class Man, where he talked about the Cold Chisel experience over there, and it just sounded so grueling to me. Like you know, the poor things, like to go from being the biggest band in Australia and to go over there and have to start at rock bottom. I mean, that's you know, that's not fair. They'd already paid their dues 1,000-fold, like John, and I think that's what John saw. He went, nah. This is finally a good thing here. I get to make good music, play for good people, and be home with my family in the country I love, it's enough.
Yeah.
You know, it was not that lure of American stardom did not lure him away, and you know, good on him, good call.
Awesome.
Because there were some songs recorded for, I guess, movie soundtracks at the time, American movies. I think one of them was Rad. There was another one that's kind of slips my mind, and like some of those songs were absolute crackers. Like some songs, and I think even maybe, and I think you just recently met Steve Lukather through as well.
Yeah.
Like like a massive thing for you, like I'm assuming, but I even think Steve play on some of those American tracks perhaps as well. And they didn't gain any traction either, and they were just absolute killer songs.
Well, the flip side of it is when I went to America, a lot of my friends over there were talking about Styx and Journey. I mean, Journey. And I remember the only song I ever saw get played on Countdown here was it Lovin' Feelin' Touchin', I think was a big sort of hit they had, the one where they're going na 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 at the end.
Okay.
But Journey, almost no one knows who Journey is here. They're one of the biggest bands that America ever produced. And Australia barely knew who they were. They didn't know who Styx were. There were so many American bands that were legends over there. And if I'd talk to the Australian, I mean, I'd come back during the 90s and I'd say, hey, you remember that song Heart of the Matter by Don Henley off the End of the Innocence album? And everyone's like, nah, never heard it.
Yeah,
what?
wow.
It was the biggest Grammy-winning thing in America when I was living there, like in '89 and into '90. I'd mention "Man in the Box" by Alice in Chains, and people are like, "No, I've never heard it. Who's Alice in Chains?"
Yeah, wow.
I'm like, "What are you kidding me?" Right? Because all those bands were on everyone's lips over in the States, yet no one knew who they were here. I talked to Americans about Status Quo. I grew up on Status Quo, and they were like, "Who's Status Quo?" Never heard of them. Slade, never heard of them. All these bands that. So it does work both ways. Like, I mean, some music does not cross. It doesn't cross the international date line, as it turns out, for whatever reason we don't know. So
yeah, wow. So I guess we'll keep moving on because there's so much we want to cover. I'm very mindful of your time. So going into the Age of Reason after Whispering Jack, was there a sense of pressure going into that album to try and live up to Whispering Jack?
Oh, I'm sure there was for John and Ross and Glenn, but I mean, I didn't feel it because I wasn't saddled with the burden of choosing the tunes. So I mean, I just turned up at the studio and they'd say, "Well, we've got this song, we're going to work on that," and I think the minute everyone actually heard Age of Reason, they thought, well, yeah, things are going to be okay. We're going to be all right. What a gun of a song! It's just a beautiful tune.
Yeah.
And I mean, I thought they had some fantastic tunes on there. So I mean, I was just, once again, it's that we're making an album. We've got to get these songs as good as we can, and this song is what we're working on. So all we're thinking about is that. You know what I mean? It's like whatever happens after that happens. But it was so out of my hands back then because that's the way the business was. I mean, there were producers, there were engineers that were going to mix it, there were promotion people, there was booking agents. I mean, everything, this machine just sort of leapt into action. And I just kind of waited for a phone call to say, be here at this time and then you will play. And and that kept happening. They gave me a book and it was my life for the next 2 months because that's where we were going to do the tour. And it was amazing. Yeah, it was. When you see what young bands have to deal with now, or young artists, where it's so hands-on, they're in control of their own destinies, which I think is wonderful. So I'm definitely not going to say that things were better back then as opposed to now. I would never say that. I just do feel lucky that I got to experience all that, because I had no idea at that time that the things were going to change so much. It's almost like being in studios and using analog tape machines and not realizing that someday no one will use these things. It'll all be what we're yapping into here. The computers that will take over everything. So I'm kind of glad that I got to experience a lot of the old school stuff. But I'm not going to sit here.
What was that tour specifically like by comparison? Because obviously, I would imagine things would be a lot grander and bigger, and like catering would probably be better. Like the tour bus or whatever bus would be just bigger and better, right? Because it's
Well, we never had a tour bus here in Australia because you just can't do it in a bus because the distances are too large. We flew everywhere.
you're
But
right.
the beauty of it with John being so popular was we stayed places. I mean, we got to as soon as Age of Reason kicked in. I mean, we were doing all the biggest venues, and I think Rod Laver had been built here in Melbourne, and we did 2 weeks. I mean, no one goes that.
That's crazy.
I mean, I think it took Pink to break the record, and she only did it about 8 years ago or something. Yeah. I mean, it was amazing. Like, and the credit to John, and I think it came from John mainly because he wanted to just pump so much back into the production, and make it big, like make it US, international, European act level production. And I've often wondered. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to talk to some of the crew guys, some of our crew about it, and just ask them. But like Chris Newman, our lighting guy, and Grant Walsh, our sound guy, like I'd love to hear. They'd be interesting people to interview about this, because I just wondered because the rigs were getting so big, they were actually getting hands-on experience at really working on what would normally be an international tour. And I doubt a lot of Australian bands would have had a chance to really get their hands on some of that stuff because the gigs were never big enough.
Yeah.
But here's John doing, I'm going to do 6 nights at Rod Laver. And so they got to go in there and hang something that'll make a show out of that and manage that, then tear it down and move it to the next place. And it was on such a grand scale. Then, because see, by the time of the end of 87, which was after Age of Reason had come out, or I think might have been 88, I can't remember. But we did the tour with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra. So it was just getting so big. Like 80 people on stage in the orchestra, and then us, and it was wild. It was just, it was amazing. I don't know. It's hard for me to really just put it into words. I was just such a dumbstruck kid from the bush. I just kind of went, I guess this is happening. And I'm probably lucky I wasn't really reading too much into it because I probably would have freaked out otherwise.
Yeah.
So I guess I just turned and, okay, so we're playing with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra now. Okay, well, let's get on with it, shall we? And otherwise, if I'd gone home, I might have just freaked out and ended up in the fetal position in a corner somewhere. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Naivety, once again, pays off.
So you mentioned that you... Oh, sorry, go Dar.
No, I was just going to say, obviously, like you mentioned, access to equipment and rigs and everything that nobody had really had access to in the past. How did that change you as a guitar player now, I guess, having access to, I would assume basically anything you needed or wanted?
It was a little annoying because I got people, this is what they're using in America, and it's like everyone's using racks. So, okay, so I got to get a rack now, do I, And the old Marshall, like my beautiful old Marshall, was not reliable. Dave Carr owns it now. I don't know if people probably know Dave from Instagram and stuff like that, but Dave's got it. So I actually get to play through it every now and then. It's awesome. But I started off with just stomp boxes and running 2 amps, like a Marshall and a Yamaha combo for clean sounds, and very primitive setup. And everyone's telling me about these rack systems, but there's no Bob Bradshaw here. You know what I mean? It's like, and I wasn't going to fly to America to buy one. So, people are telling me about Steve Stevens coming out with Billy Idol and having just racks of Marshall heads in road cases. And I'm like, you do realize that this is a large band, it's like I'm not the only guy in the band, and I'm not. Steve and Billy were basically the stars of the show. So, I didn't carry that kind of punch. It had to be within the realms of feasibility. So I was always trying to get the most out of the smallest setup. Yeah. I didn't want it to be overcomplicated because we went to Europe in 88. We went to Europe again. And this time I was trying to do a hybrid setup where I had a wet dry system going, and it was half stomp boxes and half rack stuff. Nightmare. Absolute nightmare. The poor crew was so stretched so thin. They didn't have time to look after me and all my junk. and set everything else up. So it never worked properly anywhere. And I remember we were doing this massive, I remember it so vividly, doing this massive gig in this big football stadium, about 80,000 people there, big multiple bill thing. And we did our gig, and I spent most of the gig trying to make things work and barely playing. And I was so depressed and disappointed. And I remember standing side of stage just like this, watching Robert Cray. You remember Robert Cray?
Yeah.
And I was just thoroughly enjoying everything he was doing. He was like 2 meters from me. I'm just standing there, and he's right there. And he had his red Strat and a guitar cable going into a Fender Twin, and that was his rig. And I was looking at it going, I got to sort this out, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll ever get it down to that, but I got to get as close as I can to that. And so that's been the goal ever since. And it's only the simplest I've ever got it is where I'm at now, where I've got a Fractal FM9 and one of the Fender full range combos. It looks like a deluxe, but it's one of the full range speakers you can run with the modeling.
Yeah.
And I've got my Celia guitar, and I'm one trip in, one trip out. You know, it's like guitar on shoulder, pedal board, amp high. You know, set up within 5 minutes, unpacked up within 5 minutes, and rock solid. Doesn't break. You know, it's geez, if I'd had that back in the Farnham days, I would have been so happy.
Yeah. So you mentioned you went to the States in '89. Now, obviously, from what I read, you auditioned for Nelson. Were you planning on going to the States first to, I don't know, was it maybe to try your luck or to see what's over there, or did you see the audition and then think, I might try that out? Or how did that come about, and which came first?
Well, Matthew and Gunnar were being managed by Jeffrey Shoecraft. There was another chap involved as well, Jeffrey's partner in the management company. I can't remember his name at the moment, but Jeffrey is Australian and actually did work for Little River Band for a while. And we'd met through the course of me working with John. And Matthew and Gunnar they'd been to Australia and just loved it. And they were hunting around for guitar players for a potential lead guitarist. And I think Jeffrey had said, well, I know you can consider this guy. And they watched me it was a tapping, sort of harmonics tapping type solo I did for the classic Jack concert in front of the orchestra. And they really loved that. And they said, we'd love to meet this guy and see if it might work. And it was just, I was at this really strange time in my life then where I'd broken up with my girlfriend and was trying to make a go of it down in Melbourne as a session player and failing dismally. I just couldn't get any work. And why would I? You know, no one knew who I was outside of John's band. I mean, you know, there were already very accomplished session players doing that work. They didn't need me down there. And Jeffrey just left a message on the phone and said, I've got a visa, got a tourist visa, I've got a ticket. If you want to come over, have a hang.
Wow.
And I went, yeah, what the hell? Let's do it, you know. So, and John wasn't working at the time. I think we'd just done the big orchestra tour, and he did want to take some time off and regroup a bit. So I was kind of at a loose end, hence me trying to look for session work. And I thought, yeah, why not? You know, and I had seen Matt and Gunnar on Hey Hey It's Saturday, and they seemed like really cool guys. They were very funny, and I thought they handled themselves really well. And so I just flew to America, and Jeffrey picked me up at the airport and dumped me at the Oakwood Apartments in Burbank, and he just left me there with a boombox and a cassette of the demos for the band. And he said Matt and Gunnar will come pick you up at about 6 o'clock and go to their place, have a hang, meet the other guys and everything. So I was freaking out. You know, I was standing there looking out at good old smog-filled LA and realizing I don't know anyone here. Wayne Nelson from LRB was the only person I knew, and he was in San Diego, so he wasn't even local.
Yeah.
But I put that tape on. The first song that came on was After the Rain, and I just went, oh, my God, this is a hit.
Yeah.
I mean, I just listened to it and went, I love this song. This is an absolute hit song. And then the next one came on, and I went, this is a hit song. And then the one after that came on, and the one after that, and I went, these are great tunes. I mean, look, I don't look at images. I don't look at any of that garbage. And I didn't even know what the image was even going to be at that stage.
Yeah.
I love pop music. You know, it doesn't have to be metal. It doesn't have to be jazz fusion. If it's if it's got a hook and it's got melody, I'm in. It's a sale. And I don't care if it's a female vocal or a male vocal. I don't give a stuff. It's like, as long as it's a cool song that gets me, then I'm in. And these songs just got me. And I went, I'd love to try and be involved in this. And so, yeah, Matt and Gunner came and picked me up and went to their place and had a hang. I got to meet Bobby Rock. I met Paul Merkovich. We went out onto Sunset Strip that night and had a look around, and I was just gobsmacked. I mean, it was awesome. It was so much fun. Just amazing. And I decided it was really hard. I got to tell you, it was absolutely heartbreaking for me to make that decision. And John, God bless him, he was supportive of me doing it. I mean, I'm so grateful that he actually allowed me to come back and play with him again, because it must have hurt. And I look back on it with many mixed feelings, and it's definitely nothing against Matt and Gunner or any of my wonderful friends in America or America in general. I look at that decision and think that is a horrible decision to have to make, but that is the nature of this industry, where you've got to make a call and you've got to go with it. And John actually said that to me. I was so naive. We were working on the Chain Reaction album, and I was back doing some solos and just some tracks, and I said to John, I don't know what to do, John. I said, should I do this gig in America? Like, I was that naive. I was asking him if I should leave his band. And this shows you what kind of a man John Farnham is. And he said, mate, he said it with absolute no animosity, no nothing. Yeah. He said it from the heart. He just said, mate, all you can do is either do it or not do it, and look back on it and go, it was a good decision or a bad decision.
Yeah.
And I knew that was coming from someone who'd had to make the same decision, maybe more than a few times. He had to go, well, this is a roll of the dice, but I've got to either do it or not do it. And I know many times he probably looked back on things and went, why did I do that? And so that's why I love the fact that he said he was happy in Australia and he didn't need to go to America and try and risk everything again. And I really respect that. But at the same time, my American experience really, I learned a lot over there, and I took some hard lumps over there, and it was kind of where the bogan kid from the bush had to go and get the hayseeds knocked out of his hair and really understand what kind of industry he was getting into. So it's a bittersweet thing in that regard. I just regret leaving John's band and the years I missed with him, but at the same time, many wonderful friends over there, and an amazing experience. It was just such an incredible experience for an Australian. It was almost impossible to pass up. And I love working with Matt and Gunner and the band. I mean, we had a ball. We really had a great time. It was a killer band. They were such good musicians, and the songs were great. And
I was going to say, what was that?
We toured for a year straight.
Yeah,
that was a bucket.
I think sold like 3 million albums. That's all like 3. Yeah, massive album. So you with Farnham, I think that's still the largest selling Australian album by an Australian artist, right?
I think so.
And you were part of that. Yeah, and you were part of that, and then you go to the States and you're part of this breakthrough band that sells 3 million albums there as well. So you must have just been...
We actually had a national #1 single, which is pretty rare. Like, I mean, if I'm standing in a room with a lot of very prominent Australian stars and someone says, hold your hand up if you've ever played on a song that was #1 in America, then guilty as charged. It's like, it's pretty thrilling. I mean, that was back in the days when it really was just good old fashioned record sales, money changing hands and singles being bought. And so like I said, it was a remarkable experience. I sort of look back on it and think, man, did any of that really happen? Did I just dream it? So yeah, it was cool.
What was the nature of like America? I've been there like twice, and just it seems just from a creative perspective, it seems so different to Australia. People seem to be a lot more go-getters. It's a bit more competitive. It just seems like that way in the air. How did you find being a musician, like being with John Farnham, and obviously playing around Australia, to then going in and playing in America? Was it pretty daunting? And what was like, I guess, the scene or the scene and the atmosphere like over there compared to Australia?
It's just bigger. It's just a question of scale. I mean, LA County's got 50 million people in it.
Yeah.
And Australia's got, 30? I mean, you haven't even got out of the state yet. And you're already in a bigger a bigger country and a bigger economy than, what is it? Is it California the 5th largest economy in the world or something?
Something like that, yeah.
The scale of America. The scale of America is remarkable just compared to what we have in Australia. Australian musicians are every bit as good. The Australian bands are every bit as great. And our industry is every bit as vital. And what we're doing here is every bit as important, but it's just scale.
Yeah.
In America, you drive 2 hours and you're in another city with 2 million people in it. In Australia, it's to do that, you've got to drive from Melbourne to Sydney or Sydney to Melbourne or to Adelaide, or, it's hard because the volume isn't here. What I didn't understand, this is how much I didn't understand America. When grunge finally took over and all the bands like Nelson and everything like that, they kind of just faded away. Our careers ended. And I was wondering, I wonder what happened to all those other bands. And like a band like Cheap Trick. Like I grew up listening to Cheap Trick. I love Cheap Trick. They were touring harder than ever. They just weren't in Los Angeles or New York. My friend TJ Helmerich that I ended up doing albums with, TJ said that because he was from Chicago. He said, man, that's the Midwest. He said, there's bands out there that are working their butts off. He said, we live in Los Angeles, so we think that what's hip here is what's hip everywhere, but that's not true. He said, there's a lot of music going on out there that is very successful that we've either forgotten about or we just haven't heard about yet.
Yeah, wow.
It's a big place. And I mean, the whole time grunge was happening, I remember I was doing a session for a guy who did the Nelson demos, and I ended up doing a lot of session work for him, just little stuff. And I was talking to him about it, and I said, what's going to happen to all these people that were in these bands, like all the session players that used to play on the sort of hair metal, so to speak, the 80s rock sort of stuff, now that grunge is here? And he said, they're all going to Nashville. He said, you wait. He said, you'll start seeing country rock bands wearing leather pants and they'll be screaming guitar solos. He said, Dan Huff's already there and he's already producing. And he was right. The weirdest thing when we were doing the Nelson record was their A&R guy, John Kolodner, came into the studio, and he was he's awesome. I'd never seen anything like John Kolodner. If you don't know who he is, look him up, and you won't be disappointed. He was fantastic. And quite a legend. And John would sit there, and he was angry because at the time I was coming back to do yet another tour with John, and so we were doing all my guitar solos first because I had to fly back, and no one was very happy about it. But I didn't see the problem because everyone knew what was going to happen. The album was demoed so well. It was we all knew what we had to do. It was fine. But John came in to listen to some songs, and all he heard were guitar solos, and so he was a bit grumpy about that. But he said, "What I want this band to be," and I never forgot this. He said, "What I want this band to be is the Eagles of the '90s."
Wow.
And I remember sitting there thinking, "Man, I'll have a crack at being the next Don Felder or Joe Walsh. Bring it on, baby!" It's like, I like the way you're thinking. I love the Eagles, and I was like, that's. In a way, he was right on. Matt and Gunner's father, Rick Nelson, was credited with starting the California sound. He's the guy that basically invented that sound, which Poco and the Eagles and all those sort of bands came out of. And what a perfect lineage for Matt and Gunner to carry that on. But they really wanted the image of the band and a big part of the sound to be more like Whitesnake and Heart and Def Leppard and heavier and rock. But I never forgot Kolodner saying that, and I thought, what a dude. If they decided to go down that road, they would have almost been at the forefront of a scene that hadn't happened yet, instead of at the tail end of a scene which was already on its way out. We just didn't know it. Yeah. And they could have been the first modern country rock band.
Yeah.
They could have
still been. It's so funny you mentioned Dan Huff as well, because Troy and I were massive Dan Huff fans from, I guess mainly from Giant, from the stuff he did with Giant. Yeah. And it was just, I remember hearing those albums and thinking, holy, this guy is what a sick guitar player. And then the singer was great too. And I'm like, wow, what a sick singer. But they were the same person. And that's always something that I've found very, very interesting, that a lot of my favorite guitar players growing up were absolutely phenomenal singers as well. And so they played with such melodicism. I was just always curious, did that come from the fact that they were able to articulate what they would play vocally as well? do you think that that's a thing that guitar players that can sing are just inherently more melodic with their playing, perhaps?
I think it's a thing, definitely. Ian Moss is a great example. Mossy, his vibrato in his voice is almost the same as his vibrato on his guitar. That's a real connector for me. Hearing Mossy sing and then hearing him play, it's almost like hearing the same thing. It's just he's using a guitar for one and his voice for the other. But and he'd have to be one of the best examples of someone that's just off the charts when it comes to singing and playing. World-class lead vocalist, world-class player. He could do either, but he can do both. So, and it's the old blues thing. It's the call and response that the blues players would do. They would wake up in the morning. They'd sort of fill in the gaps with themselves. And the way Hendrix used to do it, where anything could be happening at the same time. He would sing and play unison with himself. He would play a harmony with himself. He would play against what he was singing, and it could be octaves, it could be a harmony. It was just wild, the independence that Jimi Hendrix had to do all that at the same time. I really do, and I try to convey that to people if they come for a lesson and they're frustrated with their playing, and I say, the more you can connect it internally, it doesn't even matter. You don't have to be a world-class singer. If you can get a connection to what you're playing on the instrument, so many people are playing great things, but they're not listening to it. They're looking at it, They're looking at what they're playing because they've memorized their shapes and patterns. It's like, listen to the sound. Listen to the sound of those shapes and patterns. They're good. They're good shapes and patterns, but they also sound cool, The more connected you can get with that, I think that's the key to your musicianship right there. I just think, like you said, I think people that play and sing have that connection, and I think that's why they're so damn good.
Yeah, and a couple of years ago, you literally kind of blew. Just quickly, sorry. I know we're pressed for time.
No, it's okay. All good.
You just dropped Elegantly Wasted from nowhere. Where did that come from? There's some social commentary there, but again, your voice on that, the amount of times that we had done things together, and they were all the clinics, and we kind of driven the roads with Steve, and we'd done all that stuff. I did not know you could sing that.
It comes and goes. Like during the pandemic, I did a version of Walk on Hot Coals by Rory Gallagher, and because I was mucking around. Was an old guitar that's up there that used to be owned by my brother, actually. It was the first guitar I ever had. And I'd never ever played sort of fingerstyle blues, like boom, jan, or like that sort of thing. So I tuned it, put some nice heavy strings on it, and I think I tuned it to open D. It was like an open E, but down a whole step. Yeah. I think it's in D. And I thought, well, I was just sitting there, just sort of trying, just going, doing your sort of blue. I'd never done that before. I've always played slide in standard tuning, so I've never had the option to do that. And I'm sitting there, and it was during the pandemic, so who knows? I probably had a couple of beverages and was feeling a bit saucy. So I just sort of I was trying to think of something I could sing, and I just started singing Walk on Hot Coals. And I went, damn, this would actually work. I could do this. I could do a version of Walk on Hot Coals. So what I did was I had an old Marshall amp I was borrowing from a mate, and I just put on a click track and just stood there with the guitar and this microphone set up and just ran it down and just played it and sang it. And then I listened to it and I just had this real rasp in my voice, which normally isn't there, but for some reason, I think I'd had a couple of scotches and I was feeling pretty good, and it must have put a bit of fur on my voice, and I thought, man, it sounds all right. And so I ended up putting bass and drums and all that sort of stuff. So that sort of got me interested in doing some vocal things. And I mean, I'd always had a crack at singing, but I've never really done it consistently. So the voice comes and goes. And Elegantly Wasted was just one of those things where I was trying to write an instrumental tune. So I had a Logic file open, and I'm sitting there, I'm struggling away with it. It's just not happening. And I'm getting frustrated, and I look at the editing window, and there's this audio file just sitting over here on its own. And it's obviously an idea I've recorded and just forgot about. And I thought I'd just do a scratch pad notepad of it, so I've got it there. And I wonder what this is. And it was the opening riff to Elegantly Wasted. And straight away I just went, that's a song right there. Now we can work with that, you know. And I just started working with that, and next, I think I had a working demo of it by 3 hours later. So
Yeah.
So I mean, I kept perfecting it. And when I do vocals, I don't use auto tune or anything. It's not because I just don't know how to use it. I don't really have a good version of it, and I have no idea what to do with it. So I just keep singing stuff until it's in tune, and I mainly work hard on just how I say things. You know, the enunciation of the words, like to try and make it sound cool. And the only reason I called the song "Elegantly Wasted" was because it rhythmically fit that where the chorus was. And I went, well, because I knew In Excess had a song called Elegantly Wasted. And I always loved it. I thought it was a fantastic saying. I think Michael Hutchence must have coined it. But luckily my song has nothing to do with their song. It's just the same title.
Yeah.
But I thought, well, what could I write this song about? And I thought maybe, because I lumped myself in there too. Like, it's just the fact that, you know, we're all online trying to create all this content. And we take it so seriously, but at the same time, it is just the biggest waste of time. I mean, it's almost hilarious that you see influencers being so serious about what they're doing, and I'm serious about what I'm doing, and then I look back at it and go, yeah, you're not exactly curing cancer, are you? Like, I mean, it's a bit of a laugh, really. So that's kind of where the song was coming from. It wasn't a diss about the internet, but it was just basically me looking at myself and everybody else going, what are we doing with our lives? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but great tune. Great tune.
Well, thanks. I'm glad you dug it. You know, it was good fun doing it.
Well, Brett, we definitely want to be mindful of your time. So I'll Dale, is there any? I mean, well, look, honestly, we could chat for hours. To be honest, I could talk your ear off. But I definitely want to be respectful of your time. Dale, is there anything that you would like to, you know, quickly, I guess, cover, or anything that, you know, you still wanted to ask Brett before we sort of maybe wrap things up?
I know Brett's been doing a bit of I know Brett's been doing a like a live streaming legato thing that he's working on at the moment. So if you wanted to let us know a bit more about that, that would be awesome.
Oh, it's just I don't really do many live gigs now, which isn't necessarily by choice. It's just the phone kind of stopped ringing after COVID started, and when John stopped working because he became ill, it's just I don't know. I just don't really get any calls. So I mainly work from home. So I've been doing instructional material for Guitar Vivo, like that book over my shoulder was the first one I did last year. And that's all about my hybrid picking technique, which is the pick and fingers thing that I do. So there you have it. And Luke Lewis, who owns the company, asked me to do some more books for him. So, and they're not really only books. I mean, I do full video here in front of a black backdrop that I put up. And so when you buy either the hard copy book or the PDF, you go to the link inside and you get all the videos. And the hybrid picking one was just purely the exercises that are in the book, but now I'm gas bagging into the microphone, so you get to hear my lovely voice as well. So we just did a live stream last weekend for the release of a book I've done on legato technique, and I've also done one on chromaticism that'll come out in a few months, I'd imagine. And I'm just about to start work on a slide guitar in standard tuning book, which I'm pretty excited about because I really do think that a lot of my concepts for that are quite unique. And I actually thought I'd really come
apart from a lot of other people is that intervalic slide technique that you had was just something that I had never seen before. I never seen anybody approach it that way.
The angling thing. I started doing it when I was very young, like when I was about I think I started trying to play slide when I was about 16, and it was pretty dreadful, as it usually is for most people. It's pretty harsh when you first start. And luckily a friend of mine in town said, no, you got to get another guitar and tune it to open E or open A. I think I tuned it to open A, and I might have even retuned it to open E a bit because I love Joe Walsh and I love trying to play Rocky Mountain Way. And thanks to Joe Walsh, he wears it on the middle finger, the finger. And so I thought, okay, well, Joe's doing that, so I'll shove it on here. And luckily I did, because when I went back to standard tuning to get the intervals to play a thing like Rocky Mountain Way, I had to angle it like that. And I didn't think much of it. I just thought, oh, problem solved, cool, So I just kept doing it, but people kept talking about it for years, even when I was in America and all that sort of stuff. And I remember thinking, wow, I wonder if I've actually invented something. I wonder if for once in my life I've come up with something actually somewhat original. And then, of course, YouTube became a thing, and I think my good friend Marcel Yamouni in Melbourne put up a Jeff Beck clip, and the governor was already doing it. He was doing it back in the 70s, so of course he was, we're always following in the footsteps of the greats. So,
Absolutely.
But I've got a lot more ideas than that involve that angling technique and all that sort of stuff. So it's going to be fun to sort of present these and just hopefully give some people some good ideas. That's what these books are about. It's not about me big noting myself by any means. It's about just hopefully presenting some interesting ideas to younger players and seeing where they go with it. Who knows? So.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Brett, it's been. Is there anything else you want to cover, Dale?
I guess probably the last question. I know you seem to have just a very uncanny memory and a way of just transporting yourself back to a place in time and a date and a year, and like I know you've kept Glenn's letter that he sent back to you, like that's on your wall somewhere, right? Like I saw an interview, where that's there. And so you just keep all these things, and you just like a time vault, for all this information. Along the way, was there ever 1, 2, 3 multiple pieces of gear that you'd lost along the way? You either sold it, or you loaned it to somebody, you never got it back, or was misplaced, that you wish you'd never gotten rid of? Or do you still have everything?
No, I do not. No, a lot of it's gone. The old Marshall, hang on, I'll see if I don't know if I can get the camera to focus. So let me see if I can get it to see. Yeah, I can't really get it to focus on it, but it's very blurry. But yeah, that's me at about 17 years old in my mother's lounge room with my original Marshall stack. So.
Wow.
And, that's the album that did. That's the album. That's the amplifier that did Whispering Jack and the first tour with John, and was my pride and joy. And I remember I came home, might have been early 90s, and got it out of the road case and tried to fire it up, and it was quite microphonic. It just needed servicing, and I thought, it's probably broken, So I sold it to a guy here in my good friend Steve Harvey sold it to a guy in Bendigo. And then he sold it to a music store. And after that, the trail went cold. We did try to find it in about 2015, I think. Yeah. And Steve and I were trying to track it down, and we just didn't know where it was. And then I was working with my good friend Lee Bradshaw, who has a band called Horizon, and the album just came out. So if anyone's, look up the band name Horizon, and very cool album. Lee's a monster talent. But anyway, I was going down to Melbourne the following day to do a recording session with him, and he sent me a text, and it was a picture of a half stack, and he said, "Do you recognize this amp?" And I said, "No," and he said, "You should, it's yours." Oh, wow. And Dave Carr, wonderful guitar player and producer and engineer from Melbourne, lovely fellow and monster talent. Dave was the guy that bought it from that music shop. And he left it at the studio that we were working at, because he was there rehearsing, and he said, "I'll leave it here and Brett can use it." So, and I've since done projects at Dave's studio down in Melbourne, and got to play through the old Marshall again. And I did say to Dave, "Would you sell it back to me?" And he said, "Oh yeah, probably to pay for my own funeral." So I said, "Yeah, I'll take that as a no." Yeah, no, he knows what he's got. It's a great amp. So there's that, and I think the other thing is, I don't know if you can see it in the shot, but the purple guitar up there, the old Steinberger. It's up there. It was the one that was on the cover of my Rock Fusion video. And I used to have 4 of those guitars.
Because that's like, again, the REH video. Well, that's literally like a staple of that era's guitar players. If you had an REH video release, you'd hit the big time as a guitar player, right? Like that was it.
Either REH or Hot Licks, yeah. But I had 4 of those guitars. I had they were the GS model, I think they called them, and they were the only Steinbergers made with a headstock.
A reverse headstock too.
And the trans trems. And I had 4 of them because I needed them for the Nelson tour. We did a song in E flat, and I needed guitar in E flat, and I also needed a backup for it, so I had 4 of them. And during the mid-90s, things got really tough financially, and I had to sell almost everything I had. And I sold 3 of those guitars for about $650, each, because no one wanted them. Everyone wanted old like Strats and Les Pauls and things because grunge was in. Everyone wanted the real thing. And I think I could probably get about $10,000 for one of those guitars now. The trans trems alone sell for about $3,000. So
never sell it.
So yeah,
never
sell it. Yeah, that's
similar story. Red Beach from Winger. I saw I think I read an interview with him actually, where he basically came out and said their first 2 albums had actually killed it. They'd sold millions of albums. He got a publishing advance for their 3rd album. I think it was $300,000 or $400,000. The publishing advance was for that 3rd album. The album absolutely bombed. Commercially, it wasn't successful. Critically, probably not as successful as the first 2. And similar story. He basically had to sell his house to pay back this publishing advance, and was living off selling pieces of gear along the way. I guess that probably happened to a lot of people through that period, because that was probably around that 92, 93, 94 space, and just, what a tough time to be a musician.
Speaking of Winger, they were just here in Australia. Yeah. And my friend Jeremy Barnes went to see him and put some clips up on social media, and they were unbelievable. Kip was just killing it, man. That whole band was just on fire.
He's a tremendous...
They've all got to be in their 60s. They've all got to be in their 60s like me, and they were absolutely match fit. It was so inspiring, just incredible. So old dude still got it.
Absolutely. Kit Wing is one of the a phenomenal singer. I mean that. What's that third album they did?
Musician. I mean, the interview he did with Rick Beato, where he's talking about all his orchestral composition. I mean, what a guy! An inspiring human being. And seems like such a nice person too. Incredibly humble and just serious about what he's doing. Like I said, they're getting on with it. You know what I mean? They're not sitting around reading press releases and things. Really creative people are too busy being creative to waste any time thinking about it. They get on with it. And big respect for Kip Winger and the whole Reb and the whole band. I mean, they were fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic.
Same as going to see Toto and Luke on stage, killing it with a stomach virus and a broken foot, no less, and doing a nearly 2-hour show and absolutely slaying it. What a guy!
Was that the first time you got to meet Steve?
Yeah, I'd never met him before, and he's absolutely sweetest guy in the world, which I kind of knew. I knew he would be. Everyone, his reputation precedes him in that regard of just being an incredibly decent human being. And I mean, he's a huge influence on me. When I did this book on chromatics, the first shout out at the start of the book is about Steve Lukather, because it's the outro solo to White Sister that I heard when I was about 17. And Steve played something in that outro that was 4 semitones in a row, and I'd never heard anything like it before. And this is before I'd heard Holdsworth or any of that stuff. And I went, okay, now another rabbit hole to go down now. And I mean, I've just loved Luke's playing all my life. I mean, how could you not?
Yeah. Wow.
How great is it when you meet somebody you've kind of idolized and they're just the nicest person?
It's wonderful. I got to become good friends with Scott Henderson and Frank Gambale. And I mean, that's just 2 right off the bat there. And Ian Moss and I have had conversations. I mean, these are people that have had a profound impact on my life, not only with their music, but because they happen to play my chosen instrument, the guitar. And they're just awesome people. They're good people. And they're really all about the music. They never stop that search for something new to do. It's amazing. It really keeps you young into your later years, and really, I'm so grateful that I fell into it. It's just been a wonderful journey for me. I hope it's not over.
Yeah.
No way, man. No, you're still so much left in the tank.
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, look, Brett, it's as I said, we could probably chat for ages and ages, but we definitely want to say thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. It's been awesome. Yeah, just want to say huge thanks, Dale. Is there anything you'd like to say before we sort of wrap up?
Yeah, look, it's just, for me, again, just being able to reconnect and you being open to reconnecting, and we're essentially just two random people, just wanted to have a chat, and for you to be gracious enough and take time out of your evening with, I mean, obviously you have your daughter and wife and so forth, and still in Castlemaine, which is cool. Actually, what's actually funny is that one of my brother's best mates growing up, and this is probably mid to late 80s, growing up I think my brother graduated in 1990 in high school, but one of his best mates, because we grew up in the northern suburbs in Melbourne, so kind of Thomastown Reservoir, Keon Park area, a guy by the name of Dean Turner.
Dean. Yeah, I do gigs with Dean. Yeah.
Yeah, who is like just a real brick house of a drummer. Awesome guy. Yeah. Dean would literally drive down from Castlemaine to our place, and we went to see, like, I think when Kiss came out in, I think it was 95, maybe 96, and best mates with my brother. Conversely, my brother's also best mates with Dave Melling as well.
Okay. Oh man.
Dave James as well from Malmesbury Dave. So it's so funny how, like you and I did all the clinic stuff back in the day 20 years ago and so forth. But my brother was best mates with these two dudes that now you're doing stuff with. And it's just crazy how the universe works, Yeah.
We used to, sometimes on Farnham tours, we'd be sitting around in the band room, and Steve Williams, our sax harmonica player, would love to play 6 Degrees of Separation, and we'd see how close we could get anyone in the world. And it was tremendous fun. It's like if you know someone directly. Okay, so I directly know John Farnham, so you think about all the people John's ever met in his life, or Olivia Newton-John, or anyone that prominent. They get to meet some pretty awesome people, even beyond themselves, and so it's hilarious. It's a very small world when you look at it that way.
Yeah, it
sounds like just
Go, man. Yeah, go.
Go. Finish off, Dale. Go for it.
I was going to say, I didn't even know Dave was still singing, and I found Dave was still singing, and I saw that you were doing the track with him.
Yeah. Dave and his mate Adam are doing they have a project coming out called Red Door Waiting, and it's tremendous. I mean, Adam Brentnell's his co band member and guitar player, and I was going to try and play on some tracks. They wanted me to play on some tracks, but they sent me the album, and I said, fellas, this is done. It's like I'd just be getting in the way. You've done it. So, the band's called Red Door Waiting, and it's really awesome stuff. So, it'll be coming out. I think that comes out in a few months.
Yes,
awesome.
If you see Dean for me, give him a punch in the arm.
I'm not punching Dean. I wouldn't want to get one back from him. That's but no. I'll have to definitely shoot Dean an email. When Kiss last came out, I think it was when they last came out. When was that? 2023 or something. And Paul Stanley did reach out to me because I toured with him many years ago, and he gave me 2 tickets to the gig, and I thought, well, I got to take Dean, because and we got to go down and we got to get the photo with the band and everything. It was really amazing.
Really, that's so good.
Yeah,
that's so
really
good.
cool.
Like, Dean is such a massive Kiss fan. Him and my brother, they'd get dressed up in the Kiss clothes, and we'd go. We did the Kiss convention and all that kind of stuff back in the day. And I just always remember Dean was just like a super super awesome dude. And I found out you guys were doing that kind of cover band thing, and I was like, that's Dean, and that's Brett. Like, what's going on? This is crazy. It's so good.
Just quickly before we finish up, Brett, it sounds like, you hear of some really horror stories in the music industry about managers or record execs or whatnot, but just from the stories that you're telling tonight, it really sounds like you're being very fortunate enough that all the bands and working with John Farnham, it just seems like you've been fortunate enough to have really good people around you. Would that be the case, or
I can't even stress that enough, how lucky I've been. I mean,
yeah.
I guess John Farnham, Olivia Newton-John, Paul Stanley, and for a very brief moment, Robbie Williams, because we did 3 shows with Robbie Williams a couple of years back, and just for a brief moment got to share a couple of words with Robbie. but it doesn't take you long to sort of just get a vibe from somebody and get a feeling for how they are. And every single one of those people, they are just such stellar human beings. I mean, so real and such honest people. Like, I never for 1 minute assumed I was talking to a persona.
Yeah.
They were, it was an absolute privilege to get to meet them, let alone get to work with them. I mean, what a wonderful experience. Like I said, I just fell into playing guitar because there was one under the bed that my brother didn't have time to play anymore, and then was lucky enough to fall into this amazing career with John, and have been lucky enough to continue it to where I can still take care of my family with a guitar in my hands, and even at this ripe old age. And it's, boy, you can't get out of bed without being grateful, can you? I mean,
absolutely.
What a wonderful journey. And like I said, we're still going.
Firm believer that you get back what you put out into the world. And so the type of person that you are, you definitely attracted all of that positivity back in,
Well, it's probably reciprocal where if you put the good stuff out, but when you get it back, you become determined to put more of it out there. Like it's a cyclical thing, I think, where the good comes back to you, and you think, I'm going to try and put some good out there as well, and so I'm sure you're right. You get what you get back, what you give, and you give what you get.
Fantastic, Brett. Once again, mate, thank you so much for being on the show as our first guest.
Thanks for having me, fellas.
Absolute
it's
privilege.
Been an honor and a privilege. So.
Oh, you actually are the first guest.
Thank you so much.
So how was that?
Oh, there you go. Right.
That's so good. It's all downhill from here.
Cool,
mate. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Brett. Cheers.
Good on you, fellas.
Rewind.